Hello, my name is Dr. Jeffrey Glick. I am a professor of philosophy. I'm associate professor of philosophy, and I'm chair of the Department of History, Political Science, and Philosophy here at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. We also have the Criminal Justice Program. I'm here to give you an introduction to Logic, to let you know what Philosophy 2303 is about and give you enough information so that you might consider whether it would be a good fit for you for this coming fall. As a top point, Philosophy 2303 Introduction to Logic does satisfy the mathematics requirement in several degree plans, including those degree plans from English, Spanish, history, communication and speech disorders, art, social work, and both the communications majors, speech and journalism. So if you're in any of those majors and you haven't done your math credit yet, you might consider taking this Philosophy 2303 class. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on in this class. What are we going to be doing in this class? Well, what we're really going to be doing is analyzing arguments. We're going to be looking for features of arguments that we can test to see whether they're good or bad, especially the structure of these arguments. And then we're going to look at ways to evaluate the quality of the reasons that are being offered for a given point, for a given conclusion. All of this is going to have its own special vocabulary and techniques and new concepts to learn, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get right into it and just take a look at a key concept in logic, and that's the concept of validity. So let me share my screen with you because I've got some things that you should see. So I got, yes, here we go. We'll shift over to goody. All right, a definition. An argument, that's our key notion. An argument is valid. That's the notion we want to define, validity. An argument is valid if and only if it is impossible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false. So an argument has this property of being valid when it's impossible for these things to happen at the same time. True premises, false conclusion. Now, in order to, let me come back here. Okay, so in order to understand this properly, we're going to need to know what premises are, we're going to need to know what a conclusion is, and we're going to need to see some examples of this so we can practice. So let's do that. Let's take a look at some examples and some other definitions. So again, I'm sharing my screen with you. So we've got these two terms, premises and conclusion. And what are these? Well, the premises, those are the statements that are the reasons for the conclusion, or at least offered as reasons for the conclusion. They're not always good reasons, but they're the ones that are designated as reasons. The conclusion, that's the statement that the premises are supporting, that those reasons are supposed to be reasons for. So what's an example of that? Well, here's an example. This is an argument. These two numbered statements there, those are premises. These two are this thing here after the word therefore, Larry is going to throw up, that's the conclusion. So in this argument, they're saying that if these two things, these two premises are true, then this conclusion should be true too. That's what the argument is trying to establish. And let's see if it does. If Sally shows up at the party, then Larry is going to throw up. I don't know why. Maybe because Larry's allergic to Sally, or because they've had a bad relationship, or whatever. And then suppose Sally shows up at the party. Well, if statement 1 and statement 2 are both true, then it's going to be literally impossible for this to be false, for Larry is going to throw up to be false. If this is true, that if Sally shows up at the party, then Larry's going to throw up. Just suppose that's true. And it's also true that Sally shows up at the party, then it will have to be true that Larry is going to throw up. That's the definition of validity. An argument's valid if and only if it's impossible, let me get just the word, impossible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false. And in this case here, we do have that feature. Now, interestingly, let me come back to Let me come back to my screen. Okay, so interestingly, it doesn't actually matter whether the premises are in fact true, nor does it matter whether the conclusion is in fact true. Not for this property. There are other properties that are relevant to this course that we'll get into later in the course, but not for this property, not for validity. Validity just cares that if the premises were true, if they were true, then the conclusion would be true, guaranteed, right? If the premises were true, then the conclusion would be true, guaranteed. That's what we're going for. So if let me come back to my application here, my Word document. And what do we see here? Okay, so if Sally shows up at the party, then Larry's going to throw up. If that's true, and Sally shows up at the party is also true, then it's going to be true that Larry's going to throw up. But let's look at a different example. Now, I already gave you the answer there. This argument is also valid. President Trump is a fish. All fish are mortal. Therefore, President Trump is mortal. Yeah, that's valid. That's valid. That meets the definition. That meets the definition of it's impossible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false. Now, let me come back to me. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a sec, Dr. Glick, President Trump is not a fish. And yeah, I know, President Trump is not a fish. But if he were a fish, and if all fish are mortal, then it would have to be true that President Trump is mortal. Those premises lead to that conclusion. Let me come back to the Word document. We'll take another look at this. Okay, so President Trump is a fish. Yes, I know that's false, but suppose it were true. All fish are mortal. Yes, that's true, but let's just continue to assume that's true as well. So President Trump is a fish, all the fish are mortal. Well, then it's going to be impossible for these two premises to be true while this conclusion is false. These premises, here, let me just write it down. These premises that, if true, would force the conclusion to be true. That's why the argument is valid. Yeah, that's why the argument is valid. It has nothing to do with whether premise one is true. It has nothing to do with whether the conclusion is true. It's a relationship between the premises and the conclusion. That's what we're after. Okay, that's just a taste. We're going to be developing formal tools to analyze this. We'll do little problem sets to analyze this. We're going to be looking at obstacles to clear reasoning. We're going to be looking at characteristics of clear thinkers. We're going to be thinking about how to evaluate evidence. We're going to be thinking about the differences between the evidence you have versus the evidence I have versus the evidence some other person has. All of this is going to be included. So if this sounds even a little bit interesting, and maybe you want to take care of that mathematics credit while you're at it, come on over to Philosophy 2303. It's going to be fun. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call or give me an email at jeffrey.glick@tamook.edu. That's here, actually, we should probably come to the screen for that one, right? Because I want to share application. We'll come over here, allow, we'll yeah, so here's my email address, jeffrey.glick@tamook.edu. Give me an email. All right, thanks very much for your time. I hope to see you.